Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. I'm Gemma Creagh and I'm chatting with Kate Dolan, the writer and director of You Are Not My Mother, which is on Netflix now and it's made it to the top 10.
Yes, yeah. So we, well, thanks for having me, first off. For not the first time as well, which is nice to be back. Yeah, so we just, the film obviously came out on Netflix on Saturday, and then I got a message from, it was actually my auntie, screenshotted the screen for me, and she was like, oh my God, look, it's in the top 10. And I was like, oh, wow, that was kind of unexpected. Because, you know, Stranger Things came out on Friday and everything, so we kind of, you know, you never know. But yeah, so it's currently number 9. I think somebody sent me a screenshot today that it was number 6 in the UK. So I don't know if that's different than Ireland or like how that works, but yeah, so
now that's some amount to eyeballs because it's raining, so people are watching a lot of Netflix.
Yeah, that's true.
That's amazing. So let's get into how this film was created first of all. So I know you submitted for this for the POV scheme. So I was just wondering, can you tell me a little bit about developing it for that application? Because I think that's really interesting that it's sort of a designated lower budget Irish feature, but like look at the success that it's gone on to have.
Yeah, so it was it was really good timing kind of for me, because I had just done a short film called Cat Calls, and that had played at a few festivals and it was doing quite well. So I had made that film with Screen Ireland on their Focus Short scheme, which is kind of their slightly longer short scheme. So this film is about 10 minutes. And so I kind of had a relationship with Screen Ireland, and I was talking to Dee Levens, who's a producer with Fantastic Films, and she wanted to do more producing and kind of step up in the company there. And she knew I was really interested in horror. So we had met a few times to talk about like horror feature ideas and what I wanted to do. And then kind of just while we were having this conversation, Screen Ireland said that they were going to make this POV scheme, which was similar to Catalyst, which is what they had done a few years previously, which a few films had been made on, like Lorcan Finnegan's Without Name and The Drummer and the Keeper by Nick Kelly, and a couple of other ones I can't remember right now. Kissing Candace, Eve McCardle's film was made on that. So that was like a capped budget scheme where you only had like kind of micro budget to work with. So we saw that was coming up. We decided to just submit something. So I had a kind of a 1-pager idea at the time, which was You Are Not My Mother, but it was kind of a very vague idea about, you know, a parent being kind of haunting your house, I guess, in a way, when they're kind of mentally unwell. But then, yeah, so the deadline was coming up like kind of 2 or 3 weeks away. So Dee just said, okay, do a 10-page treatment and we'll submit it. Because we kind of felt like that idea was very contained. It was all in-house and it didn't have a very big cast like on the page. But so we felt like it could be done for the budget was going to be €400,000 on the POV scheme. And obviously that scheme was pointed towards kind of female writers, female directors, or female writer directors. So because I had just done the short with Screen Ireland, I was kind of in a really good position to apply for it, I think, because they kind of knew me, and it was very close after I'd done the tour with Cat Call. So yeah, it was very fortuitous timing.
And you wouldn't know, like it's something when you watch it, it doesn't feel like there's been any scrimping or saving done on it. Like it again feels very polished, very kind of like lots of oomph in all the areas, the visual areas, the performance. I really want to get into all those little nitty bits later, but I'm like, you wouldn't think that it's a slightly lower budget scheme than, you know, some of the bigger budget things that have come through cinemas that have been in Ireland of late.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think, you know, I don't really know how we did that. Yeah. Because, you know, like the budget, I know to some people like €400,000 sounds like a lot, which it is a lot of money, like in general. But for film, it's obviously, it goes so quickly. Like as soon as you start paying, up to
And
100
in the era
people.
of COVID. So you've all these extra bits and bobs, all these delays, all this messing around as well that you have to deal with and that the budget has to deal with. So it's not a
Yeah, we were very lucky because the testing, we needed to be testing the crew twice a week and then all the PP, and we needed to pay a COVID officer to be on for the entirety of prep, the entirety of the shoot. Um, so we kind of couldn't make that work in the budget, but so then Screen Ireland did give us some additional cost money to cover the cost of COVID. So the 400,000 did kind of not got on screen, you know, so it wasn't kind of just paying for masks for people. But yeah, I don't know, like it was, I don't know how we kind of pulled it off because it is like it does go so quickly on everything, and then you kind of, you know, I think it was really down to the team and the people who worked on it because we had a lot of, I think we had a lot of kind of young crew, like young HODs who it was their first time making a feature film or, you know, being involved in kind of a film of this scale. Um, and so I think just that team were so hungry to make it their own and make it, you know, really not kind of phone in anything. I think, you know, sometimes if you had gotten kind of like super established people, they might be like, why am I wasting my time running around like trying to get things for this movie that's like not going to make anybody back, you know, that kind of way. So I think we were lucky that I think everybody of the HODs and kind of the crew were just really excited by the idea and like really wanted to be a part of it and give as much as they could. And then also I think we were maybe like sometimes like obviously COVID is bad and like difficult to deal with in many ways, but I think at the time people like that we were one of the first shoots feature films that shot like since the start of COVID. We shot in November 2020, and Screen Ireland, we were kind of like the test baby going out to like see how this would go almost. I think one of the other POVs went just before us, but we were kind of like that POV and our POV film were like the test subjects to see how COVID would work. So that was like a good thing in a way because people were really, I think, just excited to be working and excited to be on set again.
which if you had waited a little bit later, it would have been like, I can't get him, he's booked, can't get him, he's booked, he's booked on foundation,
Yeah.
everyone's booked on foundation, and you're like, okay.
Yeah. Like even I think with the cast, even that was the case. Like I think, you know, we got some cast and like who probably if you know you'd waited a bit longer they'd be like, sorry, I'm going on this TV show that's paying me like triple the amount that you're going to pay me. So we got kind of lucky with COVID a little bit. I think if it had been made, yeah, as you say, a bit later, it might have been a bit trickier to get book the cast or book the crew that we wanted. So yeah, I don't know, but I think yeah, probably just a combination of all the team and all that kind of timing and luck. I think sometimes you just get lucky with things. Like we got an amazing house location, which was just a house that was up for sale, and the guy was about to sell it, but because of COVID, he was finding it like it was kind of holding off. And he was just like the sweetest man, and he just was like, yeah, of course you can get in here 2 weeks before to be painting all the walls any color you want, like go for it. And like, you know, so I think sometimes you get lucky with stuff like that you don't have to shoot in a house with completely white walls and like you're not allowed to touch it, and like, you know, you then have to buy so much more production design to get it done. But that house had like the carpets were there that are in the film, the curtains, all this kind of stuff. So you know, we had a good base to work from. So I think that gave it a good bit of production value because obviously the film takes a lot of it takes place in the house, and that's kind of the main interior location.
And actually, where was the shoot? Like where, like it was kind of one of those old school corpo houses, so it could have been anywhere in Dublin, but in that way it feels so familiar.
Yeah, we like so the whole film was basically all shot North Dublin because I'm from Fairview. So that house was actually in Clontarf. It was like actually a really nice house from the outside and like the layout of it, but I think it looks a lot smaller on screen, and we kind of made it look a bit more dingy than it was when we first got in because we painted all the walls and stuff like that. But yeah, it was all North Dublin because it was like, you know, it was set there in the script, and that's kind of it based on some of it's based on kind of my upbringing and my coming of age, which those kind of areas feel very part of that. You know what I mean? Like those kind of housing estates and like laneways that you go down to get shortcuts to, like home from school and stuff like that. So that was very much part of it. So I like the part of it was COVID as well, because the location, we didn't really have a locations person who was like going out like finding us all this stuff because we couldn't afford it. So I was just like, I remember a laneway that I used to hang out in, and then I'd go and take pictures of like several laneways that I remembered from like being 16 and that would be like our way of finding the location. So it's funny, yeah, it's just like that just kind of became part of the aesthetic of it, obviously, because it's, you know, part of the places where I knew growing up, I suppose.
So actually going back to how it originated in the development process, so was this always sort of an earworm, or was it like one idea that you just felt could be suitable, or was it something that you really wanted to dig into?
Yeah, I think like the initial idea, I felt like it had something, like I felt like it was a strong it could be a strong idea like once I fleshed it out. So it was something that, yeah, I always had, and I was like, what am I going to do with this? And I obviously, the kind of aspect of Irish folklore as well, and the mythological influence and paganism and that kind of thing, like as I was then kind of working on the treatment and working on the script, that became much more a part of it. And then, you know, it kind of grew into a bigger idea. Then it was a bit more of kind of a straight up kind of ghost story in a house on that first one pager. But I think then as I wrote the treatment and brought more of the, because I was like, you know, I've always loved Irish folklore and kind of the pagan aspect of Irish culture, and I think I just really wanted that to be a part of it. I think, yeah, you're funny when you start to write it and you're like, this film can actually be whatever I want it to be, so why don't I just put in these things that I want to put in? So yeah, I was just like gradually doing that, as you know, as far as I could go with it, obviously within the budget. So yeah.
So that's it. Fire, animals, a horse. You don't have a baby.
Yeah.
Deirdre must have loved that. She's like, oh great, the trifecta.
Yeah, well actually Dee's brilliant, because she, like, I remember when I was writing the script, I kept kind of taking out things sometimes, and Dee was like, no, like leave in the bonfire. That's part of the story and it's part of the whole thing. So leave that in and we'll just figure out how to do it when the time comes. And I was like, okay. And then eventually when the time did come, she was like, oh crap, how are we actually going to pull this off now? So yeah, I think the bonfire, definitely the fire aspects were probably the most demanding on the budget. That was like difficult, because like when you have great cast in a house that, you know, who can play off each other, and you can set up those kind of scenes within the house, they're quite minimal and easy to do. But I think yeah, the bonfire had a lot of moving parts to it, which was a bit intense.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Then okay, so it's a development scheme as well. So do Screen Ireland pair you with a development executive on their end or a script editor? How, you know, when they're kind of working with the script, what do they kind of, what's the process there?
Yeah, so initially one of the first things we did actually on when we found out we got onto the initial part of the scheme. So 6 projects got on the first kind of leg of the scheme, and then that was whittled down to 4 projects which would be go into production. And I remember the 6 projects, so it was like the 6 writer directors, and some of them had writers and directors, and the producers, we all went to like this development weekend, because it was obviously a scheme for you to learn about, like, as a filmmaker, how that process works and stuff like that. I had a project in development already with Screen Ireland, so I kind of understood the basic kind of how that would work. But it was really great because we got to meet a lot of, like, there was some great script editors at that talk, and then some people from kind of the sales side as well, like Sophie Green from Bankside was there, so she eventually ended up picking up You're Not My Mother as our sales agent. So we met her the first time like at that, and she heard the idea and thought it was really interesting. So, you know, it was a great kind of intro to everything, and that just taught us kind of how to dig into to the ideas, because at that point we only had the treatments, we didn't have full scripts, so it was like kind of like how this development process was going to start and how we would go about writing the script. And then each project was paired with a script editor right from kind of that point onwards. So that was brilliant. We were paired with Anna Seifert-Speck, who's from the UK. She's a German English script editor, and she is unbelievable. Like, she was so great to work with. And I had actually met her at Berlinale Talents when I was there. She was my mentor on a short film script scheme thing. So it was nice to kind of reconnect with her, and she was brilliant. She really brought so much out of the idea, and so much in the script is kind of down to her influence, and like her kind of just, they were almost like therapy sessions, like sitting down with her where she would talk through the character and like what it meant and what this meant, or like what are you trying to say with this, and digging into those kind of character arcs. She was really brilliant. So that really set us up well from the start to get the script up on its legs, because apart from kind of maybe a few set pieces within the third act, I think the script, that first scene where Granny pushes the baby into the woods, like that was in the script from the very first draft that I wrote. So there's lots in it that like didn't change at all from that, like those kind of first drafts that we did with Anna as our script editor. So because they knew, Screen Ireland knew the development process was going to be really long, or not very long, because it was kind of streamlined, because they wanted to get the films in production as quickly as possible. So it was great to kind of have the script editor there at your beck and call to talk about all the problems you were having all the time. So it was a great process. It was really good.
And then once you have your kind of final script that you're like, this is essentially it that I want to shoot, pending money and ability, what's your process as a director? Do you sit down and work out how the visuals are going? Have you been doing that the whole time as a writer, and then it's just a case of explaining it to your DOP, getting the mood of the piece? Like, how do you kind of start to cook the elements in the stew, the film stew?
Well, I think when I'm writing, like, you kind of like, even from the first, I think even from the treatment stage, when we went into our meeting to actually apply for the scheme, so it was like an interview based on the treatment we had given in for POV, we went in to kind of talk about what the film could be and all that kind of stuff. And I did a lookbook for that. So I was kind of even had a lookbook at that point, kind of before the script was written. So I knew always what it would feel like and what it would look like and the kind of tone of it. And then, when I'm writing, I'm a big like one to listen to music. So listen to tracks that I feel like will capture the tone, and like different film scores or horror film scores. So I was doing a lot of that while I was writing. And then obviously I feel like it's, I call it my good procrastination. So like sometimes when I have stuff to do, I'll be like, okay, you're allowed to do your like good procrastination. And that's where I like go on like kind of, websites that have good imagery and film imagery and stuff like that. And I'll just do kind of a search for like images that kind of are starting to click with scenes that I've written and stuff like that, or like visually kind of capture things.
What's the bad procrastination?
The bad procrastination is like eating toast, or like cleaning my office, or pretending I need to go to the shop for no reason.
Yeah, I know those well. Like when I have a project in, like my kitchen is fine.
Yeah, you're like, I need to just hoover the downstairs right now. It's really important. So that was like, but I kind of, I feel like I can't, like I have to operate kind of director and writer constantly at the same level, because that's just kind of how my brain works, I think.
Just wondering then about kind of communicating this tonal stuff that you want to your HODs. When do you get other people on board for that?
Yeah, this project was kind of an interesting one, because we obviously kind of towards the end of 2019, we thought we were going to film pretty soon. So I think, I'm not sure when we met some of our HODs. I know Narian Van Mail, he was like one of the first that we got on board. And I think we did meet him towards the end of 2019. So he kind of had seen all my lookbook stuff, and I'd shared, obviously he'd read the script, and then he did a kind of a lookbook type thing that was his kind of interpretation of some of the aesthetics and stuff we could do with the film. So, you know, that's kind of funny because, like, you know, that's a lot more prep than you'd normally have with a HOD. So then he was kind of on board with the project, but then we ended up because of COVID and some other things as well, just like not being ready, but in terms of some other aspects. But we then pushed it to November 2020. So Narian maybe was on board for like the guts of a year, possibly, knowing that he was going to shoot this. So when you have someone, then you can kind of get to know them more and send them more stuff. Or like if you change your mind about things, you're like, I was actually thinking, or I was like, oh, you should watch these films that have, or like, I just saw this movie, it's really good, you should go to it, and all these kind of things. So I think you know, that's helps a lot, because you just like, you know, you just have more time to kind of get to know somebody and know their tastes and know what they want to do. And then me and Narian worked on an ad together as well within that time, so we kind of got to understand how each other work and what we like. And you know, then another HOD like John Cutler, who's the editor of the film, me and him have been best friends since we were in college. So he lives up the road from me, and like we're literally in, like, we hang out all the time outside of work. So having someone like that who wants to be on board,
so
like,
it's appropriate for you to WhatsApp him at like 1 a.m.
Yes.
Go, oh my God, I can't sleep, I just had this great idea, which you couldn't probably do if it was more formal.
Yeah, like I think, you know, with John, he was so eager, like, because he hadn't done a feature film before. He had cut my short cat calls, we hadn't done a feature, and like he would WhatsApp me even and be like, I just watched this film and there's a great scene in it, like, which is a jump scare, you should watch it. Or like, you know, we would watch movies together, or I would even in some of the prep, I would film little videos of like sequences that were scares, and then with my girlfriend as the monster and stuff like that, and I would just email them to him, and then he would cut them together with music and sound effects. Because like, yeah, when you have a relationship like that, it is much easier. You can be like, will you just cut this together on your like Saturday afternoon? And he's like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And you're like, cool. So that like did make it a bit easier to kind of have that relationship with, like, you know, HOD, like your editor, who's, you know, normally you may not even get to kind of talk to them until you're already like about to shoot, because, you know, it's more the post that they're on board for. So the prep before you even shoot anything, it's kind of nice to have an editor on board to, because he read the script and he kind of even went through it and went, you know, oh well, how are you going to do this transition from this scene to this scene? What you could do is something like this, and you know, so we talked a lot about all that kind of stuff, which was great. And then, yeah, similarly then, like, obviously the rest of the HODs we kind of tacked on as we went along, but they were all, I think, kind of approached earlier than like they would have been if you were filming normally, because it was just COVID pushed everything. So you did have kind of people at your not beck and call, but like people who, and like, because then COVID hit, nobody was working really. So, you know, you could email your production designer and be like, hey, I just saw this like weird like photo series online, you look at this like paint color that they use on the wall in this picture, and she'd be like, oh, this looks really cool. So that kind of helped everything, do you know what I mean, to kind of, everyone knew the tone. And especially one really important thing was actually the composer Dee Hexon came on board quite early as well, and she read the script and started kind of riffing music based on the script, because she was really eager to be involved in the project and she really liked it a lot. So yeah, she just started kind of making music based on kind of her first initial impressions of the story and the emotions and what was happening, because we had talked a lot about folklore and traditional instruments, and so she started working on that. So then it was great, because then I had tracks that actually I could share with the cast and crew that she had done, that I could be like, this is the tone, this is what this scene will probably feel like hourly. And then people would be like, oh, okay, actually, yeah, that's really interesting. So Yeah.
Sound mix, oh my God, is just, it's stellar. Like that as well. Like it's just, there's so much tension there. It's so like it really adds an edge. Like I was just listening to it going, God, like you know, you kind of just pushes you to the edge where you're really tense, but it's beautiful. And that like almost layering a sound, you know, with water and things like that. There was one point and I was like, God, it's just so, and like that the storm brewing in the background, like when she's kind of up in the middle of the night, like it's just, it's a beautiful mix. How
Yeah.
did that take a while?
Um, Kind of, yeah. We were very lucky in that, I think all that prep did us so well because we talked a lot about like the symbolism in the film of like water and fire and elemental kind of um aspects of like paganism and folklore, and that this idea that the water is represents one thing and the fire is representative of something else, and the colors that they use, and then the noises that you use. So all these things were kind of in conversation, and then I think Dee Hexon was great because she was obviously composing the music, but she works in a very, she's kind of a sound designer as well, and like works in kind of experimental sound. So she was, her tracks, they weren't kind of like traditional, you know, you hear violins play and then just like the track goes on like that. Like it had all these like weird beats, and she would use water and she would use things, like she would use fire in her music that she was making. So then when me and John went into the edit, we had kind of heard these interesting things that she had done, and then using those to as jumping off points for things. And John's he's really great in terms of sound too. He had a great kind of input into the sound design. Like he had a lot of great ideas about like what we could do in terms of, because I think with horror especially, like it's really more about where you don't hear sound a lot of the time and where you do. So me and John did a very kind of, while we were editing, always made sound a part of every scene we edited. We kind of didn't leave the sound till later. Anytime we were cutting a scene, we made sure that the kind of the sound and music that we were using would be right, and that was kind of set up, because it's hard to sell a horror sequence if you don't have all that stuff in there to a producer or like Screen Ireland giving you notes like this isn't very scary, and you're like, okay, but you have to imagine this like creepy music. So that was like, we always made it a part of the edit really. So then by the time we actually got to the sound designer, Brendan Rahel, it was, we had a lot of bones laid down, and like Dee Hexon's music had even her own kind of sound design in parts of it as well. So, then when we got to that point, it was just kind of making it all sing. And then Brendan had his own ideas that he brought into some parts of it as well. So it just was great because it was just like, felt like it was a real part of the film from even like before we started filming in a way, which was cool.
And you do, like, it sounded like a wonderful sort of very collaborative piece. Was there anything that was stressful at all? Like besides the COVID and being pushed back and things like that? What were the sort of like, the kind of surprise pitfalls that always happen? Like, I mean, they're in everything, any event, anything.
I think, like when you obviously when you can't build things on a stage, like you can't build sets on a stage, weather is like a big thing that, we had obviously a lot of exteriors. And the exterior, so we put the exteriors the first 2 weeks of filming, so that as it got colder, because we started filming just after Halloween. So it was the 2nd of November, I think. But like 2 weeks into November, we were still filming the exteriors, and it started to, like, it was getting really cold. So like poor Hazel, like some takes, and she'd be like, Hazel's amazing. Like, I don't know how she did, like where she'd be like just in her school uniform and walking, and she'd be like so freezing, her like nose would start running, and then we'd be like, okay, we need to like just cover the fact that you're cold with makeup and like just stop like your nose running and stuff. And she'd be like, oh no. So yeah, that was like a difficult, the weather was probably the biggest pain for us to deal with. When we filmed the bonfire scene as well, I think just, we could only kind of film 4 pages a day with the kind of crew we had and the amount of equipment and the amount of bodies just on set. So we filmed about 4 or 5 pages a day, but like the bonfire scene was really tough to film in, because we filmed that in like one day, the whole thing almost. We had to get some pickups because we needed them in the end, but that was tough because, you know, you have to deal with that end sequence. You have a lot of characters interacting. Then there was
it's the whole crux of the
it's really important.
Yeah.
It's really important to get right, because that's what you're leaving the audience with. So we had a big light on a crane it was just so windy. It was just like wobbling around like this. So like we couldn't use a lot of the takes at points of it because the light was just moving on the actors' faces in a way that like it just looked like a light, and not like, you know, it felt unnatural. So there was like stuff like that, and then like using all the fire elements, and like on that night, like you obviously can't kind of rush those things because they are very dangerous. So you kind of have to sit back and wait, and then you're there going, this is taking like half an hour of time. And then like, you know, that bonfire scene as well, where you like, there is also a big emotional performance from the, like, you know, Hazel, and that's, you know, so important for the end of the movie. So it's like you're dealing with kind of a lot of very practical things which are going wrong, and then you also have to like make sure that Hazel has time to actually deliver the performance in the right way, and make sure that, you know, I'm happy with that and she's happy with that, and that it works for the scene too. So there was like a lot. That was kind of probably the most hectic evening that we had. Yeah, it was pretty rough.
I can imagine. And how was Hazel always in your mind for this? Like, I mean, Hazel is just something else. Like, she can just, without a look, give like a huge big arc of emotion, like, and do it so subtly, just with her eyes. She's just incredible. Was she always on your kind of casting list, or did she come along later? Because I mean, if it's in the mix for so long, you nearly age out by the time.
Yeah, that was kind of a worry. Yeah, I think Hazel was always kind of in our mind. You know, I'd seen her in Cunis, which was Tristan Henway's short. I can never pronounce his second name. I hope I didn't butcher it. But I loved his short, and Narian had actually shot that short. So when Narian came on board, he was like, oh yeah, Hazel should do it. And I was like, yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because we were thinking about Hazel, because she was the right age, but she is also like, I think one of the like best actors we have in Ireland probably at the moment. And like she read the script and it felt kind of like serendipitous. Well, yeah, because she just like was really into kind of like paganism at the time, and she had been like, you know, her favorite movie had been Hereditary that she had just seen recently. So I think she was like, this is exactly what I want to do. So she was really on board like as soon as she read the script, which was great for us. But yeah, I think we kind of always just thought she'd be great for it. And I think we did do a kind of a casting to find the other girls, and we had in our mind like, well, if Hazel doesn't want to, like, can't do it or whatever, there's like loads of great kind of young women in this kind of audition that we're doing. So we did an audition that was just before COVID, because we got to do it in person, which was great. So but there at that audition we met Jordan and Florence and Katie, who are in the movie now as well. So that was a great kind of exercise to do as well, just to meet kind of other great like young female actresses we have in Ireland right now, because there's so many. But it was nice that they got to be a part of the film, because like Florence and Katie gave and Jordan gave such good auditions, and I knew Jordan immediately she should play Suzanne. I was just like, she's not a Char, she's definitely a Suzanne, and like that's what she needs to play. But I was kind of worried that Katie and Florence were so good that they would say no to be the kind of like lesser parts, like more supporting parts. But luckily they said yes. I was glad, because they're so great, and they were they're brilliant and so nice to work with as well.
But it's nice to flex those like mean girl muscles as well.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a real satisfying role to play if you're like always being cast as like an empathetic ingenue. type, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think they enjoyed it. Like, I feel like those are the best days on set, when like it would be all the girls like together, like those kind of classroom scenes, or like when they're on the trip, or when they're meeting in the laneway. Because, like, I know they seem very sinister, like Katie, particularly Katie White, but like, they all got along so well, and we had so much fun. Like, when they were on set, like, I was just like laughing the whole time. Like, they were just like so funny. So yeah, those were really fun days. Those were probably my favorite days on set.
So how invested are you in the universe? Would you ever go back to that story and
The
like, or that
universe.
world? In another thing, would you ever go back to, yeah, like to kind of see what those characters are doing later, or another side of them? Because again, like Jordan's
uh,
character was very interesting, and I kind of felt like she had her own little.
yeah, I don't know actually.
I wondered, like, I was like, is this? Does she feels like she has like a fully realized side thing that I'd happily follow around as well for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think like definitely. I think they're I mean, all the cast are so charismatic and kind of, brilliant what they do. Like, you do get so roped into those characters, which is, I think, one of the biggest reasons the film works and people like it. It's like the cast are so deliver the performances so well. Um but I think, I don't know if I'd go back. I think maybe in like unofficial way. Do you know what I mean? Like, another film that takes Irish folklore and like brings it to life, but that not necessarily with those characters, maybe. Because I think I've discussed this. I actually met Stephen Shields, who wrote Hole in the Ground recently. And me and him were just talking about, like, oh, all the things you can do with like because obviously me and him both had done a lot of research about Irish folklore, and we're like, there's so much there you can have fun with and kind of, bring to life like
And
different
two such
characters.
different takes of the changeling. Like, you could
Yeah,
not, you couldn't, even though they're like, I'm sure you had people go, oh, well, he has a film coming out, but they could not be more different.
I know. Yeah, it's funny actually. I was kind of, because I think Hole in the Ground came out when I had already gotten onto the PLV scheme, I think, and I knew it was coming out, and I remember saying to myself, "Oh crap, this is like going to be they're going to do that," because I'd seen the trailer, and I was like, "This looks so good." I was like, "Damn it, like, this is the folklore thing going to be done by the time we like get to make our movie?" But I think when I saw Hole and Ground, yeah, I think I realized they're about different things, and they're about they're very different, I kind of think, in setting, and I feel like my film is probably more of a coming of age film, a little bit like about kind of coming of age in a weird way. Whereas, Hole in the Ground is obviously more about being a mother and how to deal with that. So I think, yeah, I felt okay after I'd seen Hole in the Ground. I was like, obviously they did it amazingly well, and so high production value, and it looks beautiful, and great performances again, and Lee did a great job. But I think, yeah, I felt okay that we could still make our movie. It wasn't going to be like null and void. I was like, it's still worth making.
And what has the response been so far? So you've went to great places. Have you got many people coming back to you yet saying, I love this really resonated with my childhood? Because it does touch on some very like poignant themes in there.
Yeah, definitely. I think those have been kind of my favorite responses that I've gotten, because we obviously, it's been a long journey now. Like, we had our first kind of venture out into the world when we played at TIFF Midnight Madness in September 2021. So that was like, a good while ago now. So it played at that, and then it had, a cinematic release in Ireland and the UK, and then the US, and now it's on Netflix, and it's on video on demand in the US and stuff like that. So it's been a long time kind of to receive different feedback about it. But yeah, I think you've got your like critics pick in the New York Times and stuff, which we got, which was cool. And then we got like certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes and all those kind of things, which, you're like, oh, this is what you dream for your movie. But I think the things that have definitely resonated will be more are you know, after a film festival screening, somebody comes up to you after and is like, oh, I really like this, really resonated with me. And like my experience growing up and dealing with kind of, you know, problematic family and how to deal with that. And you can really tell the people who get that and understand it, and you really see how it resonated. So I feel like that definitely for me is what makes me happiest, to talk to those people and get that kind of feedback. Although the like certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes kind of stuff is cool as well, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, nice to see that. Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, it's an amazing film, and like I'm so thrilled that it's like as I was saying to you before we started recording, that it's so lovely to see a film, a genre film, an Irish film, a film by a cool Irish woman topping those charts. So here's hoping that kind of gives it much more eyeballs as well, because I think like these things, like once they reach a tipping point, it's about momentum, and I couldn't recommend it more. Like it's one of those, you sit down, you press play, and it's over. Like it doesn't, the pacing is so good in it that you're just like, you're in it, and completely the world is like completely immersed in that realm. So it's yeah, definitely one to watch.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to hear. Yeah, I think it's kind of mad on Netflix. I feel like it's definitely going to get more, I think, independent, like as an independent kind of smaller horror movie, to just get that kind of exposure that if you see it as you log in on the like new releases and stuff like that. You know, a film that maybe if people hadn't heard of it, they might not know where to find it, and to see it there, it's like, it's really cool. So yeah, it's like yeah, it's only an hour and 30 minutes long, so it's won't take up too much of your time to watch.
Oh, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to like get to chat to you, and I love Film Ireland, so always happy to be a part of the podcast.
Great to have you back.
Thank you.